All right, so we're going to start with adding and subtracting fractions, okay? So this is number 10 right out of the second page in your book. When we go through this stuff, we have to remember BEDMAS, okay? Now this is pretty straightforward. We're adding a positive term to a negative term and adding that to a positive term. So in terms of BEDMAS, there isn't really too much confusion. We're just going to go with the first pair on the left, combine those, and then end up with the second number. Okay, so in other words, if things are the same, we have addition or subtraction question, we deal with the two terms on the left first. So the very first part of this says 7 plus negative a half. Now there are two operations technically beside each other with no number in between, which can be confusing on what we're going to do. So I want you guys to remember a couple rules here. Now this is a multiplication and division rule for integers. Does anyone remember this? Positive times a positive is a, a negative times a negative is a, good. And then a negative times a positive. Good. We can use these rules to help simplify when we have two operations beside each other with no number between. If there is a number between, then we don't change anything. Okay? But because the operations are beside each other and there's nothing there, we're going to simplify that into one operation. And we're going to use these rules to do so. So because I have a positive and a negative term, I can simplify that operation into what? A negative. So I'm going to represent that with just a subtraction sign or a negative. So we get 7 subtract a half plus 4 over 5. This makes the question simpler for us to look at. We've gotten rid of the brackets and we now just have three terms with two operations. Again, even though it is a subtraction question, we still deal with the first two terms. And in order to do that, I need them because this is a fraction. I really want to turn this whole number 7 into a fraction. How can I turn 7 into a fraction? Yes, that's right. You can put any whole number as a fraction by putting it above 1. And the reason being is because a fraction is actually a division question. It says 7 divided by 1. Well, if we put that into a calculator here, let's say we take any random number, 9. Divide it by 1, our answer is still the number 9. It doesn't change anything. Okay? Now, we're supposed to be subtracting these two fractions. In order to subtract two fractions, I need something to be the same. Not the top. The bottom. It's called the denominator. We need to get a common denominator in order to subtract these two terms. So, these terms are 1 and 2. I need a common multiple of the numbers 2 and 1. Anyone think of one?
2.
Yeah, that's right. Now, in order to turn 2 into 2, what do I multiply by?
1.
Not 0, 1. Yeah.
Okay.
And to turn 1 into the number 2, what do I multiply by? Good. So, what I'll have to do to each of these fractions, the one with the 1 on the bottom, I need to multiply that by 2 and the number on top by 2. The other one, I only need to multiply by 1, which means it's not going to change anything. I don't even really have to write that in. Okay? So we'll put these two as common denominator. 7 times 2 is 14, divided by the number 2. Subtract 1 over 2, plus 4 over 5. Now, you may have been taught in the past that if you have fractions, to get all three terms into common denominators, but we can kind of do that step one at a time. If you prefer to do that, fine, but it can be harder to find a common denominator for three terms than rather just to pair, get an answer, and then pair up again. And that's how we're going to solve that. So we've got a pair. We can now simplify this. 14 over 2, subtract 1 over 2. Our denominator stays the exact same. So we know our answer will be over 2. And it's 14 subtract 1. 13. So I have 13 over 2 plus 4 over 5. Now we're back in that same spot. We have denominators that are different from each other. So I need a common denominator of 2 and 5. That's right. 10 will work for both. I'll need to multiply 2 by 5 to get to 10, and vice versa, 5 by 2 to get to 10. So because I multiply this by 5, I multiply the top of the fraction by 5. And here we multiply this by 2, we multiply the top of the fraction by 2. 13 times 5 is going to give us 65 over 10 plus 8 over 10. Again, our denominator is going to be the same because we're adding and subtracting fractions. We'll get into multiplying later. And I add the two top terms, we're going to end up with 73 over 10 as our final answer. Okay?